So we mentioned about the skid mouse. Next is about AIDS and other acquired or secondary immunodeficiency. So this is going to be an elaborate session. So we will be, quickly skimming through the major points. If I find it difficult to complete this today, we won't be doing this. Tomorrow we'll be completing that. Okay. And I hope it's not gonna happen. Yeah, it's an elaborate topic. So first let's have a quick introduction about AIDS and other acquired or secondary immunodeficiencies. As described above, a variety of defects in the immune system give rise to immunodeficiency. In addition to the primary immunodeficiencies, there are also acquired or secondary immunodeficiencies. One that has been known for some time is called acquired hypogammaglobulinemia. As mentioned above, this condition is sometimes confused with common variable immunodeficiency, a condition that shows genetic predisposition. The origin of acquired hypogammaglobulinemia is unknown, and its major symptom, recurrent infection, manifests itself in young adults. The patients generally have very low but detectable levels of total immunoglobulin. T cell numbers and function may be normal, but there are some cases with T cell defects which may grow some more severe as the disease progresses. The disease is generally treated by immunoglobulin therapy, allowing patients to survive into their 7th and 8th decades. Unlike the similar deficiency described above, there is no evidence for genetic transmission for this disease. Mothers with acquired hypogammaglobulinemia deliver normal infants. However, at birth, the infants will be deficient in circulating immunoglobulin because the deficiency in maternal circulation is reflected in the infant. Another form of secondary immunodeficiency, known as agent-induced immunodeficiency, results from exposure to any of a number of chemical and biological agents that induce an immunodeficient state. So, certain of these are drugs used to combat autoimmune diseases such as rheumatoid arthritis or lupus erythematosus. So, corticosteroids, which are commonly used for autoimmune disorders, interfere with immune response in order to relieve disease symptoms. Similarly, a state of immunodeficiency is deliberately involved in transplantation patients who are given immunosuppressive drugs such as cyclosporine A in order to blunt the attack of the immune system on transplanted organs. So, recent efforts have been made to use more specific means of inducing tolerance to allografts to circumvent the unwanted side effects of general immunosuppression. The mechanism of action of the immunosuppressive agents varies, although T cells are a common target. In addition, cytotoxic drugs or radiation treatments given to treat various forms of cancer frequently damage the dividing cells in the body, including those of the immune system, and induce a state of immunodeficiency as an unwanted consequence. So, patients undergoing such therapy must be monitored closely and treated with antibiotics or immunoglobulin if infection appears. So HIV/AIDS has claimed millions of lives worldwide. In recent years, all other forms of immunodeficiency have been overshadowed by an epidemic of severe immunodeficiency caused by the infectious agent called the human immunodeficiency virus 1 or HIV-1. The disease that HIV-1 causes, acquired immunodeficiency syndrome (AIDS), has first reported in the United States in 1981 in Los Angeles, New York, and San Francisco. A group of patients displayed unusual infections, including the opportunistic fungal pathogen pneumocystic carini, which causes a pneumonia called P. carini pneumonia (PCP) in patients with immunodeficiency. In addition to PCP, some patients had Kaposi sarcoma, an extremely rare skin tumor, as well as others rarely encountered opportunistic infections. So, more complete evaluation of the patient showed that they had in common a marked deficiency in cellular immune response and a significant decrease in the subpopulation of T cells that carry the CD4 marker, T helper cells. When epidemiologists examined the background of the first patients with this new syndrome, they found that the majority of those affected are homosexual males. As the number of AIDS cases increased and the disease was recognized throughout the world, people found to be at high risk for AIDS are homosexual males, promiscuous heterosexual individuals, or of same sex and their partners, intravenous drug users, people who received blood or blood products prior to 1985, and infants born to HIV infected mothers. Since its discovery in 1981, AIDS has increased to epidemic proportions throughout the world. As of December 2004, the cumulative total number of people in the United States reported to have died of AIDS was 5,24,000, and approximately a million people were living in HIV infection in 2005. Although reporting of AIDS cases is mandatory, many states do not require reporting of cases of HIV infection that has not yet progressed to AIDS, making the count of the number of HIV infected individuals an estimate. Although the death rate from AIDS has decreased in recent years because of improved treatments, AIDS remains among the leading killers of people in the 25 to 45-year-old age range in this country in the sense America, I guess. So the fact that the number of yearly AIDS deaths has leveled off is encouraging but does not indicate an end to the epidemic in this country. A distributing trend is that the epidemic is increasingly centered in women and in African Americans, who account for half of the recent AIDS deaths. The magnitude of the AIDS epidemics in the United States is dwarfed by figures for other parts of the world. The global distribution of those affected with AIDS is important. In sub Saharan Africa, an estimated 25.8 million people were living with AIDS at the end of 2005, and in South and Southeast Asia, there were another 7.5 million. An estimated 40.3 million people worldwide have AIDS, including over 2.3 million children under 15 years of age. In addition, millions of children have been orphaned by the death of their parents from AIDS. Recent estimates from the World Health Organization indicate that there were 4.9 million new HIV infections in 2005, or an average of at almost 13,500 people infected each day during each year. This number includes a daily infection total of 1,400 children under age 15. The initial group of AIDS patients in the United States and Western Europe was predominantly white and male. Although this remains the group predominantly affected in these areas, more recently the distribution in the United States has shifted to include a larger population of women and an increased proportion of minorities. Worldwide, the number of AIDS patients distributes more equally between males and females, and in sub-Saharan Africa, which has the highest incidence, more than half, 57% of those afflicted are females. So HIV once spread by sexual contact by infected blood and from mother to infant. Although the precise mechanism by which HIV-1 infects an individual is not known, epidemiological data indicate that common means of transmission include homosexual and heterosexual intercourse, recipient of infected blood or blood products, and passage from mothers to infants. Before tests for HIV in the blood supply were routinely used, patients who received blood transfusions and hemophiliacs who received blood products were at risk for HIV-1 infection. Exposure to infected blood accounts for the high incidence of AIDS among intravenous drug users, who often share hypodermic needles. So, infants born to mothers who are infected with HIV-1 are at higher risk of infection. Unless infected mothers are treated with antiviral agents before delivery, approximately 30% of infants born to them will become infected with the virus. So, possible vehicles passage from mother to infant include blood transferred in the birth process and milk in the nursing period. So, transmission from an infected to an uninfected individual is most likely by transmission of HIV infected cells, in particular macrophages, dendritic cells, and lymphocytes. So, in the worldwide epidemics, it is estimated that 75% of the cases of HIV transmission are attributable to heterosexual contact. Although the probability of transmission by vaginal intercourse is lower than by other means, such as IV drug use or receptive anal intercourse, the likelihood of infection is greatly enhanced by the presence of other sexually transmitted diseases or STDs. In populations where prostitution is rampant, STDs flourish and provide a powerful cofactor for the heterosexual transmission of HIV-1. Reasons for this increased infection rate include the lesions and opozones present in many STDs, which favor the transmission of HIV-infected blood during intercourse. So, data from studies in India and Uganda indicate that male Circumcision significantly lowers the risk of male acquiring HIV-1 and lowers the risk of transmission to sexual partners from infected circumcised males. No similar protective effect of circumference was observed in those studies for other sexually transmitted diseases, including herpes simplex type 2, syphilis, or gonorrhea. So, transmission of HIV-1 infection requires contact with blood, milk, semen, or vaginal fluid from an infected individual. Research workers and medical professionals who take reasonable precautions have a very low incidence of AIDS despite repeated contact with infected materials. The risk of transmitting HIV infection can be minimized by simple precautionary measures, including the avoidance of any practice that could allow exposure of broken or abraded skin or any mucosal membrane to blood from a potentially infected person. The use of condoms when having sex with individuals of unknown infection state is highly recommended. One factor contributing to the spread of HIV is a long period after infection during which no clinical signs may appear, but during which the infected individual may infect others. This universal use of precautionary measures is important whenever and wherever infection status is uncertain. It is sobering to that though that the epidemic of AIDS came at a time when many believed that infectious disease no longer posed a serious threat to people in the United States and other industrialized nations. Vaccines and antibiotics controlled a serious infectious agents. The eradication of smallpox in the world had recently been celebrated, and polio was yielding to widespread vaccination efforts. These were considered milestones on the road to elimination of most infectious disease. The outbreak of AIDS shattered this complacency and triggered a massive effort to combat the disease. In addition, the immunodeficiency that characterizes AIDS has allowed re-emergence of other infectious diseases such as tuberculosis, which have the potential to spread into populations not infected with HIV.